I wrote my first poem when I first knew how to write, around the age of 6. It was neither particularly accurate nor particularly politically correct. It ran, "In Greenland there is no sand, but instead there is an ice bed. People build houses of ice. You may not think this very nice." The rest, I'm sorry, is lost to posterity. My mother, when reading this poem, immediately assumed me a genius, and of course, she included my twin in the category too. It took me 40 years to shake her label from me, even though there was absolutely no evidence of it being true. I immediately replaced it with the yearning to be enlightened from my time as an ardent Buddhist. Another 10 years, and I managed to see that that too was, in my case, a pointless thing. It was only then that poetry and essays started flowing. I wasn't aiming for any goal. There was nothing to do, nowhere to go, and no one to please. I was just me, and that appeared to be more than enough for those words to start flowing. I'd like to offer you a few of those outpourings now to share with you the joy of creativity. The next is probably my most reproduced poem. I would like to nudge it a bit, but it has gone out into the world like this, and like this it will have to stay. How to write a haiku. Details confuse me, so when I see a rose, although I do not know its pedigree, I write down rose, and when I cut it, I do not know whether I should cut it on a slant or straight, or underwater twice. So I write down cut. And when I put it in a vase, I do not know whether it is raku or glaze, or perhaps good plastic. So I write down vase. And when I see 2 red leaves on the earth beside the rose bush, I do not know from which tree they've fallen. So I write down red leaves. And as I set the vase and the leaves on the table, I write down rose just cut beside the vase, 2 red leaves. And although I do not know the details of what I've just done, the sadness of it all cracks my heart open. Writing on demand, as I had to do when I was the inaugural Poet Laureate of Nanaimo, is a whole other thing. For each of the 3 years of my office, I had to write a poem on immigration every year. I had to write a poem for Canada Day and a poem for the opening of the Vancouver Island exhibition, among other events. Here is how it all began, and if you go to the Port Theatre, you will see this tonka inscribed on a paving stone outside the booking office. Don't step on it. This morning, an early phone call, and my life commits deeper to the play of black words on white paper. Here's a poem about a place in Nanaimo I became very attached to during those Nanaimo years. On the bench. I'm eating a double scoop waffle cone on a bench by the seaplane dock. I leisurely watch Nanaimo amble by before my eyes. Dog owners and their pets, how like each other they grow as they age together. And families, the youngest riding dad's shoulders, the next holding her mother's hand, and always the dawdler who straggles behind, picking the odd weed to make a bedraggled bouquet. And then there are the lovers, entwined to various degrees. And at the dock, I watch the travellers with their airport bags and backpacks, and I wonder what images of Nanaimo are tucked in their luggage, and what Nanaimo memories have slipped in for them to unpack later. Now here's a poem for Eli, my constant support for over 45 years, although he doesn't understand poetry and he's read few of my books. Thank you. So here's the poem.
They're too long.
Our clay. What do you say?
They're too long.
Our clay. This is based on lines by Quan Dao Sheng. The lines are, I am in your clay, you are in my clay. Am I in your clay and you in mine? I've never thought of these 30 years that way, not even once. I've thought of making good meals and a comfy home, flowers from the garden for the table, a good poem occasionally, and royalties to pay the mortgage. Am I in your clay and you in mine? The question makes me uncomfortable. It's too exaggerated for my English conditioning, too demanding for something I'd taken for granted. Still, it won't go away, so I start to count more carefully the 5 to 10 fruit and veg I prepare each day. I read the odd book you recommend and plump the pillows every morning. Am I in your clay and you in mine? Still, the question remains unanswered between us. Beside the added zest, I'm trying to add to each element of our partnership is now attached guilt and shame and embarrassment at my somewhat less than perfect love. Am I in your clay and you in mine? The quote has become a koan, so one dawn I wake in a fever of failure. I note you are lying against me and have a hand on my breast, and I have a determined arm around your shoulder. Then, in an instant, I know not how, all dissolves, and I ask myself in confusion, whose hand, whose breast, whose arm, whose shoulders? And the tears run down over my clay and your clay and mine. Sorry.